The factory floor stank of burnt metal and old sweat, like pain soaked into the concrete. Machines groaned and hissed around the workers, each man doing his time like a convict in denim. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. And for most of these, men, that was enough. Dante, the only black man on the line, wiped his forehead and leaned into the welder. He'd been working here 2 years, quiet guy. Never started anything, never backed down either. He kept his head down, his work clean. But that didn't matter to the 3 dogs who sniffed out weakness like blood in water. Jake, the ringleader, built like a fridge, but his brain probably ran on beer and ignorance. "Hey, Dante," he called, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You sure you know how to read the manual? Or are you just following the pictures like back in your jungle school?" Laughter exploded around them, not from everyone, just the usual suspects. The kind of men who laugh because they're afraid of being the next target. Dante didn't flinch, didn't even turn around, just kept working. Jake wasn't done. He stepped closer, grabbing a scrap of metal and pretending to read from it. "Warning, do not operate if you got no rhythm. You hear that, D? Maybe try dancing instead, huh?" More chuckles. One guy muttered, "Leave him alone, man." But Jake ignored him. Then the door opened. Boots echoed on the concrete like a warning shot. Jason Statham, lean, sharp, and moving like he owned the place. He wasn't in a suit today, just jeans, steel toes, and a black jacket dusted with grime. A man who looked like he belonged, but didn't give a damn about fitting in. He didn't work here, not officially. He was just visiting the foreman, an old army buddy. But the second he stepped onto that floor, everything slowed down. Jason's eyes locked onto Jake, who had now picked up Dante's lunchbox and was holding it up like a trophy. "What you got in here, D?" he mocked. "Chicken and watermelon? Or is that too obvious?" That's when Jason spoke. Calm, cold, "Put the box down." Jake turned. "Who the hell are you?" Jason walked closer. His voice was low but sharp enough to slice through noise. "I said, put it down." Some of the other workers recognized him. Not because of fame, not because of films, but because of that look. Like violence lived in his bones and peace was just him being polite. Jake grinned, tossing the lunchbox to the side. "You some kind of hero?" Jason stopped a foot away from him. "No, I just hate bullies." Dante stepped back, eyes wide. He'd seen plenty of guys talk big. Most of them folded when it counted, but this was different. Jake took a swing. Big mistake. Jason ducked, twisted, and drove his elbow straight into Jake's ribs. A sickening thud. Jake gasped, stumbled, and dropped to one knee. The other 2, Mark and Kenny, rushed in like dumb backup. Dancers. Jason didn't flinch. One got a boot to the knee so fast it cracked. The other caught a punch that spun him right into a stack of crates. Metal clanged as they crashed. Silence fell like a dead body. Jason stood over Jake, who was coughing on the floor. "You ever touch that man again," he said, pointing at Dante, "and I'll come back with more than my fists." He turned to Dante, nodded once. "You good?" Dante blinked, then slowly nodded. "Yep, thanks." Jason didn't smile. He just looked around the room. "Anyone else got something smart to say?" Nobody spoke. Then he walked off, like nothing happened. But for everyone watching, something huge had changed. And it wasn't just bruised ribs or cracked pride. It was a line drawn in dirt, and now everyone knew where they stood. The factory buzzed back to life, but it was a different kind of noise now. Quieter, awkward. Whispers floated through the air like smoke. No one looked Jake in the eye as he limped away with a busted ego and a bruised side, dragging his pride like it owed him money. Dante didn't say a word. He picked up his lunchbox, wiped the dust off the lid, and went back to work. But something inside him was rattling, not from fear, from shock. It wasn't every day someone stepped in. People saw, people always saw. But they never did anything, and then came this stranger with that calm storm in his walk and fists that spoke clearer than any manager ever had. During the lunch break, Dante sat on a bench near the back lot. Cold air bit at his neck. He usually sat alone, not by choice but by habit, safer that way. But today was different. Footsteps approached. Jason sat down beside him without asking. He had a bottle of water in one hand, grease on his knuckles. "They bother you like that every day?" Dante looked over, hesitant. Not like today. Usually it's just comments, looks, laughs. Jason nodded slowly. That's how it starts. You didn't have to get involved. Yeah, I did. There was a pause. Not awkward, just full of things not being said. Two men from two different worlds, but in that moment, they were the same. Dante asked, "You military or something?" Jason smirked, eyes on the distant cranes. "Something like that." Dante stared ahead. "They're gonna try something. Guys like that don't just back down." "I'm counting on it," Jason said. A few yards away, Kenny stood with a bag of frozen peas pressed to his jaw. Mark had a limp. And Jake? Jake hadn't gone home. He was sitting in the foreman's office with a face like thunder and a plan in the works. "You see him?" Dante asked. Jason didn't turn. "Jake?" "Yeah." Jason finally looked at him. "Men like him. They don't fight fair. They lie, twist stories, pull strings." Dante's face tightened. "He's gonna try to get me fired." Jason didn't blink. Let him try, and he did. By the time the lunch break ended, rumors had already started. Someone said Dante had started it. Someone else claimed Jason was a trespasser who assaulted 3 men, and someone had conveniently left out the racism, the mocking, the humiliation. That's how it worked. Whispers turned into words. On paper. A formal complaint was written up by Jake, signed off by Mark and Kenny, of course. It landed on the foreman's desk before the day was over. Foreman Russ wasn't a bad guy. But he was tired. Tired of drama, tired of tension, tired of pretending things would sort themselves out. He called Dante into his office just before the shift ended. Jason was already there. Dante paused in the doorway, confused. Russ sighed, rubbing his temple. "Dante, this is serious." Jason didn't sit. He stood in the corner like a loaded gun. "What's going on?" Dante asked. Russ handed him the complaint form. "They're saying you provoked them, that you brought an outsider onto the floor and, quote, encouraged violence." Dante's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Jason. Jason stepped forward, slow. "I was invited here. By you, Russ, remember? You called me yesterday. Said you wanted to catch up." Russ looked uncomfortable. "I didn't expect a fight to break out. I didn't throw the first punch, but I damn sure finished it," Dante added, voice firm now. "They've been coming at me since day one. You know that. You just never said anything." That hit. Russ's face hardened, not in anger, in guilt. Truth stings harder than lies ever could. Jason leaned in. "You gonna let your floor become a playground for racists, Russ? Or are you finally gonna do something?" Silence. Then Russ stood up. "I'll handle it," he said. Jason and Dante didn't say thank you. They just walked out side by side. But this wasn't over. Jake wasn't done, and neither was Jason. That night, the factory floor didn't leave Dante's mind. Even when he was home, in his quiet little apartment with peeling walls and a TV that barely worked, his thoughts kept spinning. Jason's words, Jake's eyes, Russ's silence. It all stayed with him. He tried to sleep, but his chest felt tight, like something was coming, and it was. At 2:17 a.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A voice, low and slurred. "You think you're a big man now. You think you made us look weak." Clicker. Dante sat up in bed, heart pounding. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Jason sat in a dim bar, nursing a whiskey and watching the ice melt. He wasn't drinking for fun. He never did. He was watching, thinking, calculating. That factory floor wasn't just about bullies. It was about something deeper, a culture of silence, the kind that rotted from the inside out. The bartender, a sharp-eyed woman named Lily, gave him a look. "You look like a man who's about to do something." "Stupid," Jason half smiled. "More like something overdue." He stood, tossed a few bills on the counter and walked out. Morning came fast, and so did the fallout. Jake didn't show up for work, but he made sure his absence screamed louder than his presence ever did. A new rumor hit the factory floor, that he was planning legal action, that he'd been brutalized by an outsider. That Dante set him up. Dante walked in to find his locker tagged in red paint. Rat. Jason was already there. He looked at the word, then looked at Dante. "You good?" Dante clenched his jaw. "I'm tired." Jason nodded once. "Then let's wake some people up." They walked into the foreman's office again, this time with photos. Jason had snapped pictures of Dante's tagged locker, of the bruises on Kenny and Mark that matched defensive hits, not an attack. And he had audio, too. He'd recorded part of Jake's earlier rant when he stormed off on day one. Russ stared at the phone screen. "Where the hell did you get this?" Jason's voice was flat. "You invited me here, so I brought receipts." Russ looked at Dante. "Do you want me to press this further? Because this could get ugly." Dante looked him dead in the eye. "It's already ugly." Russ leaned back, sighed like a man with concrete on his chest. "All right, leave it to me. I'll set up an HR inquiry." Jason scoffed. "HR's gonna bury it, you know that." Russ paused. "So what do you want me to do?" Jason stepped forward, lowering his voice to something sharp. "Suspend Jake, publicly. Let everyone know this isn't going under the rug." Russ looked nervous. "That'll cause problems." Jason didn't blink. "Then let it." By the end of the shift, the notice was posted on the bulletin board. Jacob. Miller suspended pending investigation. It hit the factory like a grenade. You could feel the tension in the air, thick, bitter. Some of the older workers looked pissed, a few younger ones, relieved, but it didn't stop there. Jason and Dante walked out the gate side by side and saw Jake's truck parked across the street, engine running. He was inside, staring, smiling. He didn't move, just sat there like a storm waiting to break. Jason narrowed his eyes. "He's not going to take that suspension quietly." Dante nodded slowly. "I know." Jason reached into his jacket, pulled out a slip of paper, and handed it to Dante. "What's this?" Dante asked. "My number," Jason said. "Next time they try anything, call me, no matter what time it is." Dante folded it, slid it into his wallet, because something told him the next time wouldn't be words or paint, it'd be violence. And when that day came, he'd need more than fists. It happened 2 nights later. Dante had just gotten off a long shift. He was tired, sore, and mentally drained. The factory air stuck to his clothes like guilt. He tossed his work boots in the corner of his apartment and collapsed onto the couch, dinner untouched on the counter. His body begged for rest, but fate had other plans. At 11:38 p.m. he heard it. Bang! Not a gunshot, something sharper, closer. He jumped up and ran to the window. Outside, smoke curled into the night sky. He sprinted to the door, heart in his throat. His car. Flames licked up from the hood, cracking the windshield and lighting up the parking lot like a funeral pyre. Neighbors started yelling. Someone called 911. Sirens cried in the distance. Dante stood there, barefoot on cold concrete, watching everything he owned on wheels melt into ash. And then he saw it. A spray-painted message on the sidewalk in front of the fire. "Stay in your lane, monkey." The hate was loud now. It wanted to be seen. Jason was there in under 30 minutes. No questions asked. Just showed up in a black truck with the engine still running, jaw clenched so tight you could hear it. He walked past the cops, past the neighbors, straight to Dante. "You okay?" he asked. Dante didn't answer right away. His eyes were still on the message, on the flames. Finally he muttered, "This is what standing up costs?" Jason's voice was like steel. "No, this is what it costs when cowards are allowed to feel safe." He turned to the cop, taking notes. "You get a plate off any nearby vehicles, cameras." The cop shrugged. Doubtful. "Looks like someone knew what they were doing." Jason stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're gonna find out, and if you don't, I will." The cop raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" Jason looked him dead in the eyes. "The guy who's going to be a problem if you're not." The next day at the factory, everything was different. The workers had heard about the fire, about the slur, about the fact that Jake's suspension suddenly expired, and he'd been quietly allowed back by corporate. Jake didn't strut this time. He walked in like he'd won something, like the fire had sent a message that worked. Dante didn't say a word, he just worked. Jason was nowhere to be seen that day, but his absence didn't feel like silence. It felt like the calm right before something shatters. Lunchtime rolled around, and Jake sat at the same table as always, Mark and Kenny beside him. They laughed louder than usual, joked louder. And when Dante walked by with his food, Jake said, just loud enough, "Bet his meal smells like smoke now." The table roared with fake laughter. Dante froze. Then he walked past, didn't look back. But what no one noticed was the small wire in his shirt pocket. Jason had given it to him the night before, just in case. "The moment they show their real faces," he'd said, "we capture it, let them hang themselves." That evening, in a dingy hotel room near the docks, Jason plugged the recorder into his laptop. The audio crackled to life. Should have burned the damn building, not the... Man, he lucky that was just a warning. If HR won't fire him, we'll make him quit the old-fashioned way. Jason hit pause. His fingers tapped the table, slow, measured. Then he stood up, grabbed his phone and made a call, not to the police, not to Russ. He called someone else, a contact from his past. "Yeah," he said when the line picked up. "I got a file for you. I need this pushed public, no filters, no edits." The voice on the other end asked, "You sure you want the smoke?" Jason looked out the window. "I want the fire." By the next morning, the factory was trending online. A leaked audio file, a blurred photo of the message near Dante's burned car, a story titled, "Racism at Steel Corps, Black Employee Harassed, Car Torched, HR Silent." And guess whose face showed up with the article? "Jakes, you ready for part 5? We're stepping into the public eye now, the world's watching, and some people aren't happy about it." "Keep going?" You said, "Yes." ChatGPT said, "Let's keep the fire burning." Part 5 is here, and now that the world's watching, the real war begins. By 9 a.m., the factory was in chaos. Phones rang off the hook. HR's inbox was flooded. Corporate sent out a tight-lipped statement about taking allegations seriously. But it was too late. The internet had grabbed the story and chewed it raw. Comments poured in, hashtags trended, and local news vans parked outside the factory gates like vultures waiting for blood. Jason and Dante walked in through the back gate. Workers stared. Some nodded in silent respect. Others whispered with bitterness, bleeding through their teeth. Jake wasn't at work. Neither was Kenny. Mark showed up, but with his hoodie pulled low and his usual smirk gone. Jason didn't say a word. He didn't have to. He walked like a man who had unleashed a storm and wasn't done yet. Dante sat at his station, pretending to work, but his hands were shaking. Not from fear, from pressure. All eyes were on him, some filled with blame, some with guilt, some with quiet hope. But he couldn't ignore the feeling crawling up his spine. They were going to push back. And when they did, it wouldn't be petty, it'd be ugly. Later that day, Russ called Dante into his office again. He looked different this time, paler, sweating, cornered. "I got orders from corporate," he said, sliding a paper across the desk. "They're opening a formal investigation. External review, you'll be interviewed." "So will Jake and the others." Dante stared at the paper. "And what happens now?" Russ sighed. "You might get put on leave, just while they sort things out." Jason, leaning against the wall, crossed his arms. "Let me guess. Paid. Vacation for Jake and Dante gets the boot to keep things quiet." Russ didn't answer. Which was an answer. Jason stepped forward. "You do that, and I leak every name, every statement, every policy your company's ignored. Think that trending. Post-hurt? I haven't even started." Russ looked up at Jason. "You're not even an employee here." "I'm what your company's afraid of," Jason said. "A man with proof and nothing to lose." Russ sat back, defeated. "Fine, no suspension. But I can't protect you." "Dante, not from what's coming." Dante stood. "I've been unprotected since day one," and he walked out. That evening, Jason and Dante met at a quiet diner off the highway. Cheap coffee, cold fries, and booths with cracked vinyl. But it was safe. Jason pulled out his phone, scrolling through emails. "You're not alone anymore," he said. 3 other black employees from different Steel Corps locations just reached out. Same stories, same patterns. Dante looked stunned. "It's everywhere?" Jason nodded. "Corporate's been sweeping this stuff under the rug for years. What happened to you?" "It's just the loudest proof." Dante shook his head slowly. "All I did was work. I didn't ask for this fight." Jason looked him dead in the eyes. Sometimes the fight finds you, and when it does, you either stand or get buried. Dante didn't speak, but his silence held a decision. He was standing now, but back at the factory something darker was brewing. Jake hadn't been fired. He'd just gone underground. And tonight, in a shadowed garage with Kenny and Mark sitting, around a case of warm beer and too much hate, they were planning something. Not another prank, not words, a message, a final one. Mark said it first. "We can't let him win." Jake nodded, staring at a dark photo of Dante he'd taken weeks ago. "He made us the bad guys," Jake muttered, "so let's show him what bad really looks like." Kenny cracked his knuckles. "I'm in." Jason didn't sleep that night. His gut twisted with something he couldn't explain. All his years in the field, he knew when trouble was crawling. In the dark, and it was crawling now toward Dante, toward something irreversible. Dante woke up gasping. There'd been a knock at the door. He sat up, checked the time, 3:42 a.m. He moved slowly, heart pounding. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe... mistake. But when he opened the door, nobody was there. Just a single envelope on the floor, taped shut. He picked it up with trembling hands, peeled it open, and felt his stomach turn. Inside was a printed photo. It was him, walking into his building too. Nights ago, the message scrawled across the bottom in marker, "Next time we won't just watch." Jason showed up 10 minutes later. He didn't ask questions, he didn't act surprised. He looked at the photo, his jaw clenched, and said, "They're escalating. We have to end this." Dante sat on the edge of the couch, the envelope crushed, in his fist. "How do you end something like this? These guys, they're not scared anymore." Jason met his eyes. "They're scared. That's why they're lashing out. They know you're not the same man who walked in here on day one." Dante shook his head. "I don't want revenge." Jason's voice dropped low. "It's not about revenge. It's about survival." That day at work, the air was different. There were whispers that Jake and the others had been seen around the factory, despite still being off-duty. Someone claimed they were trying to access the supply storage. Someone else said they'd seen Kenny talking to a delivery guy who didn't even work there. And then a worker, Luis, a quiet guy from maintenance, slipped Dante a warning during break. "I heard something, man. They're planning to trap you. Warehouse 3, something's going down tonight." Jason was already ahead of it. He'd already planted a friend inside the factory, a camera guy dressed like a vendor, setting up surveillance in Warehouse 3. "We're catching them red-handed," Jason said. "No more waiting." Dante looked unsure. "You really think they'll show?" Jason's tone was ice. "They're already there." 9:37 p.m. The warehouse was dark. Quiet, Jason and Dante waited in the shadows behind a stack of steel pallets. They weren't alone. Jason's friend Manny monitored the hidden cameras from a van parked out back. Every angle was covered. Then, like ghosts, they arrived. Jake, Kenny, Mark, all in hoodies. All carrying something. A crowbar, a can of gasoline, and a bag. Dante didn't even want to guess what was inside. They moved like they knew the layout. No fear, no hesitation. Jake spoke first, voice echoing low. "We'll smash the lockers, torch the place, blame it on him. Maybe leave a little souvenir behind, something that'll make him crawl away." Kenny grunted. "Ain't nobody gonna miss one black worker." Mark laughed. "Especially one who acts like he's better than us." Jason pressed a button on his phone. Every word was being recorded. He looked at Dante. "This is it." Dante didn't move, didn't speak, until the moment Jake raised the crowbar and Dante stepped into the light. "Looking for me?" The three men froze. Jake's face dropped. "Are you supposed to be—" Jason stepped out behind Dante, gun holstered, badge clipped to his hip. "Yeah, badge, name's Statham, private federal contractor," he said. "And you three just committed felony conspiracy on a recording." Jake's voice cracked. "You set us up?" Dante's voice was calm but cold. "No, you did that the moment you lit my car on fire." It happened fast after that. Manny called the cops. They arrived in under 4 minutes. Jake, Kenny, and Mark were arrested on the spot, resisting, screaming, blaming woke politics, swearing they were framed. But it was all on tape. The threats, the plan. The hate, everything. By sunrise, the story was everywhere. 3 men arrested in racial attack plot at steel core factory. Whistleblowers' evidence leads to hate crime charges. Private investigator Jason Statham exposes racism ring. The internet didn't just react, it exploded. The factory was forced to shut down for a full investigation. Corporate heads rolled. And Dante? Dante finally exhaled.